Welcome to Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums, the podcast for professional mums who are doing it all. I'm Jazmin, mum of two, qualified social worker and lover of personal and professional development. And I know firsthand what it's like to juggle career, parenting and everything in between. Here, we dive into real conversations about motherhood, career, health, well-being, and the daily balancing act that comes with it. You'll hear from experts in the field, as well as everyday professional mums sharing their stories, struggles, and wins. So grab your favorite hot drink or reheat the one you forgot about, and let's get into it.
Welcome to episode 6. It's so lovely that you've joined me once again for the Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums podcast. Just to help other mums find the podcast, I have included the word mums in the title. So you'll notice from listening to the previous episodes to now that I've added the word mums after smart, successful, and stressed. What today's episode is going to be focusing on is values and living according to our values. If you're connected with me over on my Instagram and also on my YouTube, that you would have noticed I had a 3-week Aligned and Thriving series in which I posted a longer video on the topic of the week on my YouTube and then posted content throughout those weeks, shorter content on my Instagram. The 3 topics that I chose were 3 of my core values, both as a business owner and professional, but also as a mum. So these were just my 3 core values, and I did quite a lot of reflection to narrow it down. I found that when I started reflecting further on my values, there were so many, so I really had to narrow it down to 3. And the 3 values that I closely align myself with, hence the name Aligned and Thriving, because when I started to become more consciously aware of my values, I started to feel more aligned with them, and then I started thriving in different areas of my life because I was acting in accordance of those values. So my 3 core values are connection, empowerment, and family. So if you'd like to hear more about my discussion on those 3 values, you can definitely head over to my YouTube for the longer videos, or you can head over to my Instagram where we'll have shorter versions of those videos, and it will also have some other posts as well based on those values. So I won't go into them in this episode, but I thought it was a good idea to talk more broadly about values and have 3 reflection questions for you. I'm going to write down that I've said 3 because sometimes I go in with so many ideas. So I've actually written a note here. I'm narrowing it down to 3 reflection questions on how you can explore what your values are if you're not familiar with them. Prior to being a business owner, one of the roles that I had is a school counselor. So I've worked with both primary school age children, so elementary aged if you're elsewhere, and all the way up to essentially age from sort of 5 to up to 19 years of age. So I've worked with children across, I guess, the childhood lifespan. And as part of the support and interventions I would provide these children and adolescents I became really interested in values and did some training on ACT. And if you're not familiar with ACT, and you may not be if you're not working in the mental health space, it stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. I did training in ACT, and particularly training that also encouraged me to reflect on what my own values were. And during my work as a school counsellor, it was really important that I tried any theory, any therapy, any intervention really on myself before unleashing it onto others. So before I started to use like value-based questions with the children I worked with, I practiced on myself first. So I started with getting, and you can get them free online. So I started to explore what my own values were, and there were free printable values cards. You can go online and look up values cards, and there's some free versions online as well. But I would reflect a lot on what my own values were. So that was the start of it for me. So this was quite a number of years ago, and as I moved into becoming a business owner and coaching a lot of professional women and mums, then I started to realize that values-based action was something that we can all benefit from. So not just in a counseling setting, but even in a coaching setting and just a living your daily life setting. So that's why it's sort of originated from my counseling days, but then it's very much becoming a part of my personal, my business life as well. So that's why I wanted to introduce you all to some reflection questions. And I have narrowed it down to 3 to try and make it manageable as possible. So the 3 reflection questions that I invite you to think about as you listen to this podcast episode. And you can definitely save this episode on your preferred app and then come back to it if you're wanting to return to these 3 reflection questions in the future. I often do that. I'm a huge fan of podcasts, and when I hear an episode that really resonates with me, I will actually save it and I will return to it to re-listen. And every time I re-listen to one of my favorite podcast episodes, I actually gain new self-awareness and more insight into myself and how I think, and it just causes me to reflect even at a deeper level when I return to that. So I invite you to do the same if you wanted to. The first reflection question is, what motivates you to get things done? So things could be tasks in the house, tasks in your personal life, it could be in a work setting. So what motivates you to get these tasks done? For example, thinking about in a professional setting, regardless of what industry you work in, or if you're a business, regardless of what industry your business is in, what motivates you to get things done? It could be a sense of achievement, that one of your core values is that you have a sense of achievement when you complete tasks off your to-do list. It could be wealth or wealth building. So you're working in your industry to build wealth for yourself and your family. So having an idea, and then these reflection questions are quite broad, but the idea is to, once you consider the broader reflection question, then it encourages deeper level thinking as well. So then there'll be other, hopefully increased self, insight or awareness from these questions. And these are questions I regularly ask myself. The second reflection question is, where do you feel most like yourself? So in other words, where you can really just be yourself. And in certain situations, we might feel that we're putting on a mask or a facade in which we have to act a certain way or be a certain way. Perhaps if we're a really loud, vibrant person, our personality is just booming with energy, we may work in an industry that doesn't really allow us to fully be ourselves and act with our true personality and letting our true personality shine. If you work in the legal industry and you may be in your late 30s or even 40s, and you might work in a firm that has a lot of older people who maybe are encroaching retirement, maybe who are, more quiet in personality, more reserved. It's not to say that people who are older are necessarily more reserved. I mean, they could be people of a similar age to you, but they happen to be really reserved. So you may feel that you have to sort of dial down the energy so you don't stand out. Or so thinking about that as an example, returning to the reflection question of where do you feel most like yourself? Is it when you're going for a walk in nature? Is it when you're sitting down doing coloring with your children? Where do you most feel like you can be yourself and express yourself? And then that will enable you to consider which value sits underneath that. So if you feel most like yourself and able to be yourself when you're cooking a gourmet meal on a Saturday night for your family, that may be something that's really important to you, and you might like to try a new recipe. Maybe you like to try a different cuisine every week. So then you may explore further what value sits underneath, my love of creating this beautiful elaborate meal for my family on a Saturday night when I have more time. And it could be that your underlying value could be creativity, for example, or family, because it's really important that you share this lovely meal that you've so lovingly presented with your family. And the third and final reflection question is, what brings you joy? So what areas in your life, and I'm going to put this into two subcategories, in your personal life and your professional life, what brings you joy? And then use those moments of joy to unpack what values then sits underneath that. So for me, one of the areas that brings me joy is when I'm going for a walk with my family. And we've started to go for post-dinner walks. It initially started as just an opportunity to just walk off dinner. If you've had a little bit too much, let's walk off dinner. But actually, I find it's emotionally regulating. I have a really good chat with my family at the same time. So then the value for me that sits underneath that is one of my 3 core values, which is family. I think it falls under family and connection, really, because I'm connecting with what's important to me. I'm connecting with my family. I'm connecting with nature. So these reflection questions will hopefully enable you to explore further what some of your core values are. So in this episode, we've discussed values quite broadly. And if you're wanting to look further at my 3 core values, which are connection, empowerment, and family, you'll be able to head over to my YouTube for my longer videos on these topics, and also my Instagram for my shorter videos, as well as my other content that I've created around this. So I encourage you to have a look at my YouTube and also my Instagram for a bit more inspiration, a bit more of an insider look into my 3 core values. We've discussed our values and how living in alignment of our values can actually really help us to achieve what we want to achieve. And if you're not sure about what your values are, there were 3 reflection questions that we explored. And the 3 questions are: what motivates you to get tasks done? Where do you feel most like yourself, or where you can be yourself very freely? And the third is, what brings you joy? And I've invited you all to reflect on those questions and think about what your core values are. And you can have a look online for values cards to have some other ideas of how to label some of the values that you'll be exploring. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Smart, Successful, and Stressed Mums. It's such a joy to have you here and such a privilege. If this episode has been helpful, I would love you to send me a DM or an email and let me know how it's helped you and what insights you've developed, what your core values are, if you now have a little bit of increased clarity. And share this episode with a fellow professional mum out there who might benefit from these messages. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.